thank you very much for inviting me to tell a little bit about our project in Amersfoort. First I will introduce myself. I'm Mendel Robbers. I'm creative director of a company called Schipper Bosch. We are a real estate developer and investor, and we have a track record of 32 years investing and making nice places. And within the last 32 years, we tried to work with young architects to make innovative places. And for instance, we work with young, ambitious Dutch architects like offices of Ben van Berkel, UN Studios, and MBRDV. But making all these projects, we realized that you can make nice projects, but if your neighbors don't do it, you run quite a risk. And that's why we, the last 10 years, stepped over to area development. So basically you can more direct the whole context and not only just one project. And to give an idea of how we see projects, I'll show you a small artwork. The artwork is presented in the Dutch tiny town Madurodam. Probably you know it, or well, you have like several parks also in the US and at Disney World with similar size. The artist John Kermeling was invited to make a really beautiful place. That was the assignment, to make a beautiful place in the Dutch tiny town. And if you take a look what he made, you see a beautiful chair with a man in it in the sun, with a nice background in the green with a nice tree. If you zoom out, what he needed to make the nice place, you see, well, he needed to make a sun as well. He had to give the sun energy, hopefully like with sustainable energy. And so basically you see how much you have to curate in a way to make the nice place. So the trees, the infrastructure, the heritage, and even the cloud, if you can succeed in that. But this gives a little bit the view of how we see making beautiful spaces. And we make these chairs, we make these energy systems, and we make these nice places, and it can be temporary, like in this case, which was a festival pavilion on one of the Dutch islands, which was just there for 1 month. Either we try to make innovative residential areas. This is one of the newest all wood residential areas, which is for a short period of time the biggest cross-laminated structure in the Netherlands. Either we make and develop spaces that have less to do with buildings, but more to do with ecology and biodiversity. And by doing that, we feel that you only can make speed if you somehow can control the whole system. And that's why we're not only developing real estate, but we are also developing energy systems. We develop material like sustainable materials, and we plant the trees ourselves, and we maintain the trees and the buildings ourselves. And the project I'm going to talk about is presented in this fantastic book, which is produced by the Dutch Heritage Agency, and it's situated in Amersfoort, which basically is also the hometown of the agency. And actually, we're literally neighbors. Here you see where the Cultural Heritage Agency is situated, and we're on the opposite of the train tracks, which is really nearby. And this is actually in between our two kind of offices. There's this very intriguing history, which has some similarities with the tasks you have in New York. What you see here is that if you take a look at the photo of 2008, there used to be this enormous kind of emptiness, because like at that time they bulldozed away the old city fabric. And if we zoom in, here you literally see on one side of the train track the side of the culture of the future side of the Cultural Heritage Institute, and the other side, the project I'm going to talk about. And there's this striking resemblance of your project, which in a way is also is this sole object in a kind of field of nothingness, you could say, and then surrounded by kind of a generic urban development, if I could say so. Back to the Nieuwe Stad and the project in Amersfoort. The thing was, the whole old city fabric was erased because it had to make place for what they called city shaping in the Netherlands, with this city forming in Dutch. And well, the plan makers had the idea of erased the whole context and built new building blocks, new housing areas. But there was this one tiny issue, and there was that in our factory, the factory we later bought, there was still toothpaste manufactured by Iskhuis and others, and it was owned by Unilever until 2012. It was still producing, and after 2012 they moved over the factory to France. At the same time, there was this economic crisis, and the normal situation would be that the factory was bought by the city government. The city government made kind of these ambitious schemes like I just showed you. And then it was kind of plotted in several smaller plots and given away by developers that would develop and finally sell it to the market. But the city council of Amersfoort had a big issue with these kinds of projects they did, and they lost a lot of money. So during the crisis, they promised one thing to do it, never do it like that. Again, so basically there was no government involved anymore with the transaction from industry to the future. At that same time, there was this like force in the city where people stood up and really tried to protect the industrial heritage. And this is one of them, Joke Sigman, who really urged everyone that this was a really, really important factory, also seen from within the field of the architectural history and the cultural history. And she was right. And luckily we had her in town because and everyone respects her a lot. She got a honor by the Dutch king. But this is literally what she managed to do, that everyone started to see the factory as a monument. And like I said, it was a monument. It is a monument for true. It is it's designed by a Amsterdam architect called Philip van der Warners. He has a legacy of making these fantastic brick buildings in Amsterdam South. You probably visited one day. And it was an example of like Dutch modernism and functionalist architecture in 1933. And that was exactly the year where Le Corbusier and the other modernists started to describe their ideas of the functional city and the functional architecture. The owner of the factory extended its capacity. He needed more warehouses, more factory halls, but it was always done by the same architect, and that is quite unique, you could say. So this is the whole ensemble that was still there till it stopped producing toothpaste. And if you take a look at what then is an important thing, is that urban development always apparently started with demolishing the urban fabric, then after the demolishing, people tend to start the plan making, and urban planners jump in, finally architects jump in. But for us as a real estate developer, that is an issue where we don't earn anything. So and the outcome is always arbitrary, you could say, because finally you have like a fashionable city area or city development, but it tends to make cities pretty generic. So if you take a look what happened in Amersfoort, and here you see the factory here on the bottom of the image, it used to be a really fantastic, diverse cityscape with silos, vertical elements, even with a forest, with housing areas. And erasing these kind of fabrics meant also erasing the inhabitants and erasing the stories. And you could say erasing the commitment of the inhabitants of the city with the site. So to us, instead of like this instant urbanism where you have like this gap of plan making, which can take 7 years or more, we instantly work with the old buildings, and we try to immediately fill them with program and with activities. And we believe that you get a lot of like qualities back. And I mean, like I said, there's this tendency that because of development, cities become exchangeable and kind of generic. And it's these kind of old layers that give authenticity to a city. And give a kind of a place or are a magnet for these old stories and the old, you could say, songlines of a city. Well, it used to be a factory, of course, for toothpaste manufacturing, and so it was not really inhabited by people. And that's what you could see also in the layout of the factory, that it was filled with the machine vents, with chimneys. And the first quick step we did was to prepare it for human activity. And we invited a lot of people already, because we discovered that although it's a famous brand, the toothpaste brand they produced, many people drove along the factory but didn't know what kind of quality there was inside because of the closed factory walls. So we opened up, made the sites public, and started discussing and debating about what this place could be in the future. At the same time, we started already kind of making it more human in a way by implementing a restaurant and a cafe where people were kind of seduced to come to the place and to experience. Here you see a picture of the inside. At the same time, you have to commit immediately, and that's what we did. We implemented an organization already in the old factory. So here you see Marieke, Richard, and Ellen, which they together are the team for the area management. They manage the maintenance, the administration, and they are point of contact for all the people that visit the area and rent a space in the area. And at the same time, we started dreaming. The only risk is that if you ask urban developers or architects to dream, you get building plans. And we wanted to have like interesting kind of connections, and we wanted to have like program that was kind of refreshing in Amersfoort. So we used the tool of the architects and urban planners, and that's the model. But it's a model which just shows the existing factories and buildings. But the potential new buildings were kind of not there. It was just shimmers. If you see it, it's like just wire models. It's just open models. And then we invited like all stakeholders, neighbors, or the city council to think with us. And they were literally asked to modify the model and to stick their dreams on Post-its in the model. We did this a couple of times, and then after that we asked the city council if we're allowed to not make a master plan, because master plans are about zoning and about volume. We wanted to talk about ambitions, basically, and while like having the economic crisis in mind, like the future was really uncertain and is uncertain in a way. That's what we experienced. So we distilled like some anchor points from all these meetings we had with these stakeholders, and these anchor points became the shared ambitions, which were also shared by the city council. At that point, there was just one kind of voice in the city council that asked for some kind of rules about height, because the difficulty in the Netherlands is that height, like you have in the US, is a different discussion. At that time, the highest building in Amersfoort was not allowed higher than 50 meters, for instance. We invented that because of that one rule, and that was that in the central square of the future area, the sun always had to shine, starting from King's Day. We have King's Day on 27th of April. It's kind of the first day in the Netherlands where people tend to have a celebration outside. And in our idea, it would be fantastic to have King's Day on the central square in the sun. Well, that kind of gave us a spatial envelope. So future developments would always fit in that envelope, and so that guaranteed the sun. Then with the team on the location, we heavily kind of curated the people that we allowed to rent spaces. The thing is, and that's what you see here, is that it's easy to rent out loft spaces. It's kind of you attract the cultural elite with it. It's you get the lawyers and the architects or in the communication offices, but that would be a kind of a gentrification situation. And we also wanted to have like a diversity of people. So we also asked, and we literally chased them. That we want to have a school, for instance, and here you see like the vocational education school for haircutters and beauty for saloons, by doing that, we could really diversify the amount of the different groups that used the old buildings, and we got a lot of extra because of that. The school started a haircut, a beauty parlor and a haircutter studio. And by doing that, they needed test persons, you could say. And that linked our site to the neighbors, because the neighbors is an elderly home, with a lot of ladies that like to do their hair and like to do their nails. And so by introducing the school, we could not only kind of have new services like a haircutter and a beauty parlor in the area, but at the same time, it really connected the area to the broader context. Then it's good to always look beyond the border of your site. Here you see us literally peeking over the factory wall, and on the other side of the factory wall, there was this awful parking lot, which was owned by the city, and actually was a big issue. There was a lot of drugs dealing and other kind of activities at night. And we wanted to have quality there as well, because, like I said before in the presentation, that if you have like such a neighbor, that kind of impacts your development. The city council then said, "Well, okay, it's a parking lot. It's crisis. We are kind of in a situation that we had a crisis. You can rent many parking lots, but you can't develop it. And you can rent the parking lots and you can put things on top of it," they said. And then we asked them, "So, okay, can it be like 100 or 200 parking lots?" Yes, we have enough parking lots, they said. Exactly at that time, this building, which is done by two Belgian architects, Robrecht and Daam, which was in another city, in Almere, a little bit north of Amersfoort, was about to be demolished. It was exactly the width of the parking lots. And because of that, we dismantled it. We bought it, we dismantled it, and built it up on the parking lots. And in that way, we could slowly introduce program to this nasty parking space that was next door to the factory. Here you see already, they were already positioned. And then slowly we could break open the conversation with the city council that now, like in between these buildings, there should be a really nice public space. Then, like you see, we wanted to have a lot of, like we want to make a public space, a connecting public space, a circular public space with an agora, and a lot of biodiversity in a way. So we wanted to have a lot of trees and a lot of green. But the municipality then kind of, as a reflex, always says like, yeah, but it should fit the maintenance schemes of the city. So we just have a few trees that you can choose from, and we have like a few lampposts you can choose from. And actually, you have to realize some parking still, because there are a lot of entrepreneurs around the site, and so you can't get rid of all parking lots. And this is kind of then the thing is that we try to engineer the rules then a little bit. No one asked what kind of parking lots. No one made rules what kind of parking lots we should make, and we discovered that if we make just parking lots for electric cars with charging poles, then it was allowed to do so. But at the same time, it helped us to kind of move cars away, like charging. If people stick to charging poles, you can find them if they stick too long. And in that case, we could make 20, like a public square with just 20 parking lots, which were kind of a call for the future in a way with electric driving, which at that time was really new in the Netherlands. By doing this, we actually also said to the city council, let us make the parking lot. We want to go beyond your maintenance system in a way. And then they said, well, just buy it then. We don't want to be involved in thinking different or putting different lampposts or putting different vegetation. So as long as you make it public, you're allowed to buy it. And that helped us a lot. So that's why, and this is an image from the beginning. You see already like a diversity of trees. You see even a palm tree, which is possible because of global warming. And here you see already kind of in a later stage that we really try to increase the biodiversity in the planters. And here you can also see the charging stations for the cars, for the parkings we had to make. But everything has a kind of a double meaning. To us, this is a public square where we also want to have other activities. And by having the charging poles, it's also that you can offer energy to, for instance, food trucks from festivals or to festival tents. And you have a system of let them pay for the energy. So by doing things with a double meaning, we could really make like public space also as a business model for the whole site. At the same time, by having the possibility to design the square, we could also design things underneath the square. And this was the possibility for us to implement a heat system and to connect all buildings on a sustainable heat system. And it was just one move. We just installed one plant and we could connect all buildings. Here you see the system. And it was striking how fast people tend to to see the qualities, you could say, and even this is a marriage which occurred just before the COVID hit in. So even marriages took place because of the quality of the square already. And here you see a festival, which is occurring like every year. The only thing that was the next step. That at that time we were a little bit kind of ignorant by or irritated by the fact that there was this really red building next door, which was positioned with the back to our side. Whilst we tried to make a really vibrant city, we literally had like neighboring buildings that turned the back to us. In that way, it is interesting that as long as you believe and dream, things happen. So one day, we made the square, we put the buildings on top of the parking lots, and one day we were called by a really big consultancy firm in the Netherlands, and they said, like, we are at the moment in these really generic office buildings in Amersfoort, which were built in this generic area. And they wanted to move over to an authentic place, like the place we were making. They said because it's an issue of human resources. The young generation of consultants do not choose us anymore because we're in such a nasty environment. So that was an issue for us. We thought, should we make kind of like a fortress for consultants? Should we make a really big office buildings with consultants that probably never leave their building or never establish connections with the other people on the site? But there was this ambition of the company to see things different. And one of the steps, and that's what you always what you see already in Silicon Valley as well, is that like people like Google and Facebook moved over to flat offices, basically. That the offices became one big square and not like stacked offices, like or cell offices. So yes, they were able to think different, and we had just one space where we could then fit them in, and that was just on the roof of one of the old halls, which contained on one side a pop stage and on the other side a distribution center for city logistics. And we already had the plans to, if we want to eliminate the back of the building in the views from the square, if we introduce 2 additional levels, we would succeed in kind of architectural kind of editing that side of the square. So that's what literally happened. The consultant said, like, yeah, we want to sit on the roof. It would be fantastic to have such a fantastic view over the square and over the river, which is a little bit further. And they were accepting the fact that they didn't get all amenities in their building because the environment offered the amenities. So we made a building which has no canteen, has no copy services, and they have to move to the other entrepreneurs on the site. And the restaurants sell a lot of more sandwiches and coffees, and the communication guys make a lot of videos for these consultants. And so we were able, by accepting these consultants, we were able to make a lot of economy for the other people in the area. But the issue with these kind of projects is that you work in a situation where you already have buildings in use. So basically, the building system was adapted to the fact that underneath in the hall there were already people working, and there were pop concerts going on. And the whole construction system is like a bridge building, basically put on top of it. They just had 2 days of disturbance underneath the building, or in the building underneath. By doing this, we had the opportunity to make one of the facade really nice, facing the square we just produced. Here are other images. So by doing this, and by these kind of tactics, we think that you can work beyond kind of the given. And the only thing we like to achieve is to establish really, really interesting connections. So that the school haircutter student cuts a consultant, cuts the hair of the consultants, or they cut the hair of the neighboring elderly. And the restaurant sells more sandwiches. And that's why we do these kind of developments. It's really about the kind of the economics for others, and for establishing connections between the different user groups. And this was fantastic. That then the Domus, the German architectural, it's an Italian magazine which also has a German version, and they picked a project up in a way that they wrote about that the whole in Silicon Valley, Apple and Google move over to making inclusive cities for just their workers, where all facilities are. But then they said, isn't it more social? And that's where the images of the Nieuwe Stad were introduced. They said it's more social if you make a campus, which is literally the city. Well, that was a big compliment we got. Thank you for your attention.